Hi, hello everybody. Good morning. Hope you're all doing well and hope you're all happy and safe at home. Most important things, right? So, yes, today we are going to talk about emotional intimacy in a marriage, which is very, what to say, critical aspect of a marriage. And to talk about this, we will have today with us Sangeeta Parthasadi. She takes care of the Instagram handle World Doula, doula by herself. She helps women during their prenatal, postnatal, antenatal, post birth, during birthing, all those things. So she helps women a lot of go through that cycle of journey, and she also helps women during their post birthing session and helps them to overcome their traumas, their wounds, and helps them in their healing process. So today we're going to talk with her about how important and why is it important that emotional intimacy is needed between couples, and how far does it actually have an impact on the marriage and everything else, that roots, what are the roots, where does it origin from, and everything else. So without further ado, let's just call upon her. Uh, I did. I've sent her the request, just waiting for her to accept it.
Hi,
Hi. Good morning.
good morning. Am I echoing or is it okay?
Oh, you're fine, and your light is working really well.
I thought I'd be a further away from the screen than it is.
கொஞ்சம் கூட நீங்க பின்னாடி போலாம்.
Amma. I'll
ஏன்னா your chin gets cut.
juggling.
Ah, yeah, nice. Now
Yeah,
it's fine.
yeah.
So, yes, first of all, thank you so much, as always, to accept to do these lives amidst your daily one-on-one clients and sessions and everything. So, means a lot. Whenever you accept, I feel like this conversation is something that I need to prepare well so that I ask you the right questions and value the time that you give for this space and the concepts around which are usually not spoken about. So, first of all, thank you, and you are doing amazingly well. Keep seeing your feedback from clients, and I always feel this is meant to happen. Why is there a surprise for people? Because I really feel this is the space you are meant to be. I don't know what you were doing in the past with the corporate world, but I think this is the space you're meant to be, and you're shining like amazing, and you're not just shining, you're helping other women to shine. So that's something that is something for me. I look for strength in that more than inspiration or anything else. For me, that's strength. So
Thank you.
let's get going into today's topic. So, usually, when you look at it, intimacy, if you say that, people think only word that they resonate with is sex. There's nothing beyond people are able to think about it. And that's how we are all brought up. That's the misconception that we are living with. So, let's break that today. It's beyond sex. It's far beyond sex. So what is intimacy? What should people think about when they say intimacy or when they hear the word intimacy?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right when you say that when people intimacy, it automatically means sex.
Yeah.
So, like I said before, uh, we live in a world we have equated sex and sexuality with heterosexual, the penetrative, penis and vagina, orgasm. That's it. But that is a
Yep.
very narrow definition of the broad spectrum of sexuality and the shades and colors within ourselves and our partners, right? So as if this penetration and orgasm, the holy grail or the end result, that's the one to go for, right?
Yeah.
And when you think about it, this is how the world is structured. It's a very linear task solution, get
Mm.
in, get out, and that's
Yep.
that, right? Um, So this is one thing to understand is our preoccupation with defining the whole spectrum of first confusing sex with sexuality,
Yeah.
confusing sex with sensuality,
Yep.
and confusing sex with intimacy, right? And
Yep.
that comes from, when you think about it, right, our whole modern medicine systems, they're all very compartmentalized, fragmented.
Hmm.
So we
Hmm.
see birth. So if you take a car, the person who knows the engine knows nothing about the brake, for
Correct.
example. That's how we've broken it down, right? Therefore,
Yeah.
anything related to obstetrics or reproductive medicine ultimately boils down to a very small set of organs in the body, right? And when it comes to sex, we think that it is just the penis, just the
Yep.
vagina, it's just the orgasm, right? But human sex, you know, the idea of being turned on is a whole body process,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
This
Yep.
is this is why we've unfortunately brought it down to that. I'll give you an example. When I started
Voice, Akka, voice is breaking a little.
breaking, okay,
Ah,
mm, let me see if I can come up closer and see if that helps. It's the first time with this. Okay, see if
yeah.
it works.
Yep.
Does this
Better.
work?
Better.
Better. Am I
Yeah.
still?
Yeah. A little, I guess. A little.
Mm, my earphones is unfortunately. Let's see if it gets too worse. I'll use the
Okay.
earphones. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was a story about when I started doing somatic work and I was training, like in the initial days. And that work is very experiential. So
Yeah.
somebody works on you, etc. Right? So, uh, my mentor said, "What would it be like to orient to pleasure?" That's just what she said. And in my mind, I thought pleasure and sexual pleasure or orgasm, right? And
Yeah.
I could not really comprehend this idea of pleasure being anything, just orienting to
Yeah.
pleasure. But now I do. For example, it is how you explore your sensorial world, right? Like drinking a cup of coffee, looking at a garden, walking barefoot in grass. So there is a spectrum of, it's a whole body sensory experience, right? So that
Yes.
is, so just to set the context for that, it is not surprising we associate intimacy with sex, right?
Yeah.
Because that's how we have kind of a very narrow understanding of this, and our preoccupation with this colonialism, capitalism, right? It's
Yeah.
the holy grail, it's penetration, right? And the
Yeah.
orgasm. That's
Yeah.
it. You know, it's not oriented to pleasure, it's not oriented to the whole spectrum of what the body perceives as arousal or sexual arousal or not even sexual, sensual, right?
Yeah.
Sensual pleasure, right? So
Yeah.
because it's patriarchy, right? So sex is
Yeah.
about man penetrating, man orgasming. That's that. Right? There is
Yeah.
very little dialogue about female pleasure or even male pleasure, for example, other than this holy grail of get erection. Right? So it is not surprising we are, confusing the two.
Yeah. But it's like even in today's times when there is, I would say, yeah, as you said, there's a lot of capitalism and consumerism going on. Not many people are understanding the whole, what do you say? What is the meaning, simple meaning of intimacy in a marriage? And intimacy in a marriage is beyond sex, is what not, it's like a block. It's a mental block. It could be because of the environment that we are living in, the upbringing that we have had, or anything. It could be the cultural values, the spiritual thing, or irreligious values, or whatever it could be. But you're not able to think that in a marriage, between a couple, if somebody is actually sitting in a dining room and just holding each other's hands, it doesn't mean it's the bedroom love always, right? It could be also something like I'm there for you. Or I just want to touch your hand. Simple, straightforward. But then it's always connected to the other thoughts of just sex, and not that it could be happiness, or it could be sharing joy with each other, or just the physical touch, right? That can give so much of strength to your partner.
Yeah, yeah. So broadly speaking, I'm going to talk about Indian marriages and why intimacy is so kind of confirmed for us. So there are two kinds of marriage. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one kind of marriage is viewed as a social and religious duty. Okay. This is the kind of marriages that our mother or our grandmothers had, right?
Yeah.
Where the root of that kind of marriage is about families coming together, communities coming together, and the core root or the outcome of marriage is producing offsprings for the continuation of that community or caste or whatever it is, the society, whatever, religion, etc. Right? So the entire goal of that marriage is that it's all consuming and it provides a safe container for the your religious duty of producing offsprings, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So it is not, so when you think about the religious and socio-cultural context to what marriage is, think of India, for example. In Hinduism, the man has to be married for him to pursue, unlike other religions, the Vedic texts, etc., say that it's a
Mm.
duty to marry, have sex, and have children.
Yeah.
So higher forms of initiation. So the Grahastha faith is
Mm.
a moral, like it's a religious duty for a man and a woman. Okay.
Mm.
There is nothing about love or sex or what it is. Right? It's a divine duty that you are performing as a part of your duty to your religion or your society.
Yeah.
This is what marriage has been traditionally,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, in this marriage, eventually there is
Mm.
spiritual oneness. Okay, so the
Yeah.
idea is that in a over a period of time, there is some form of spiritual oneness or whatever. That container creates for
Okay.
you, right?
Yeah. Akka, I
Therefore,
think it's echoing for so a lot of people and it's not clear.
hmm, uh, can you give me a second? I'm going to try and get some earphones.
Sure.
Do you want to stop and stop this? Then we
Can we do that? Can we
or
do that?
I will log off and you keep talking, and then when I come back,
Okay. Sure.
I'll come right back.
Yeah.
I've not left. Uh,
So yes, we are talking about emotional intimacy and how our roots are impacting our emotional intimacy as in a marriage, and why is it important to understand the whole spectrum of intimacy beyond the whole sexual life as such. So it's beyond that. It's because we usually resonate ourselves with intimacy and just to be sex, but yes, it is much beyond that, and how a healthy emotional intimacy between a couple can have a very very strong, what to say, I would say strong and healthy relationship, and you will show and model healthy relationships for your children, because I'm sure it's very, very important that why do we get married? We get married not to get a life, we get married to share a life, share our emotions, share our thoughts, and we want our partners to be sensitive towards our emotions, our life experiences, what good and what bad we have done, and whatever it is. We want our partners to be uh, have that connect, and for that we need to be a little emotionally connected and have that emotional intimacy, have that kind of emotional listening with each other, like not just active listening or just listening. I would say understand those emotions that sometimes that man and women are not able to tell it out in words. Sometimes I would say that just that silence with each other gives so much of comfort, and that silence in itself gives so much of strength at times. And I would say silence is sometimes is so much of warmth that is much needed in a marriage, much needed between a couple. And emotional intimacy is all about this. And I feel that we as individuals should understand this before even we get married with married with someone else. And she is ready, and I've sent her the request, and I'm super excited.
Okay, is it better now?
Much better, much better.
Yeah, okay.
So
So,
we're
there
talking about
is
two kinds of marriages.
two
Yeah.
kinds of marriages, right? So, in this kind of religiously sanctioned, religious duty based marriages, right?
Yeah.
There are some underlying principles or thoughts, which is
Mm.
that marriage, right, is not just
Mm.
between the individuals, right? It's between the
Mm.
families, the communities, the whole structure around it.
Yeah.
And the underlying assumption is that marriage is an institution that can
Mm.
take anything you put on it and survive,
Mm. Yeah.
right? So individuals live in safety in service of continuation of social norms and
Yeah.
protecting and preserving the status quo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so this is the
Yeah.
fundamental goal in a marriage,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
That
Okay.
it is not a contract between individuals, it is a contract between generations
Generations.
and communities, and hence it is all consuming, right? It can take anything, right? It can
Mm.
take infidelity, that this, they say kallanalum kanavan, like it doesn't matter, so the whole rules of how two people get together is very different.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is important to understand, right? Now there are certain core values in this construct, okay,
Okay.
or defining values in this construct, which is deference, obedience, submission, surrender, implicit trust, and delayed gratification.
Mm.
Somehow, this belief that over a period of time,
Mm.
couples bond in whatever way, okay, and
Yeah.
largely it is in there are very it's a very strong container of religion and intergenerational families that hold it together
Mm.
over a period of time.
Mm.
Therefore the idea or the ideal world, right, is that it can weather anything. Okay,
Yeah.
but what happened was over time there were a lot of forces that have threatened the safety of that container, right? That container and its safety only works if everything else around it works, right?
Okay.
Which
Mm.
means communities coming together in support of each other, larger families,
Mm.
there are so many other aspects that made it work, which we don't have today,
Yeah.
right? So this kind of marriage, while it does not exist in its exact form today, that is one thing, right? Now there is another kind of marriage, right, which is two individuals coming together. Okay, it's primarily
Mm.
about the individuals. They
Yeah.
are the focus,
Yeah.
right? Not their future offsprings, not their ancestors, not their religious duty, etc., right? Now this is about what we call love, right?
Yeah.
Lust, emotional intimacy, and it exists in both kinds, but the difference is, so there is this physical intellectual connection that is a prerequisite to even getting married or being in a relationship, right?
Yeah.
versus somehow trusting that container or the institution to say that it will come later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the trust has been eroded, rightly so, for various reasons, right? So this is,
Yeah.
yeah. Now the prerequisites for this kind of marriage is autonomy, agency, that is individuals being able to make their own decisions, right? And individuals being accountable for whatever happens as an outcome
Yeah.
of that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And adulthood is a fundamental prerequisite for this kind of marriage, that the two people entering into this contract are consenting adults,
Yeah.
in the sense of not just earning and being of legal age, but also emotionally growing into an adult. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because the idea is that whatever ups and downs that this marriage has, the couples themselves, with maybe help from friends or trusted family of their choice, autonomy again,
Okay.
can weather it
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
an atmosphere of adulthood as adults. Okay. So this is a prerequisite for this kind of marriage. For the other kind of marriage, you can get married at any time, because there are 50 people in the marriage, right? Okay. Right. So the values for this kind of marriage is pleasure, instant or fairly immediate gratification, happiness, mutual respect, and somehow this idea of equality.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So this is important for us to understand where we are. Unfortunately, today we're neither here nor there.
Yeah.
We're confused, right?
Yes.
We're right in the middle. We have some elements of this thing, some elements of that thing, and I think that started in the generation before us, right? In
Yes.
some ways.
Yes.
Now, sometimes it feels like, I don't think we'll ever go back to that. And
Okay.
I'm not saying we go back to this, but we have to figure out where we are and how we're in the
Yes.
middle. And it's very confusing for all of
Yes.
us,
Very confused. Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
unfortunately, what happens with couples or individuals that think they want the second kind of marriage is that they have the second kind of dating, where it is about the individual, or before kids come, this idea that both of you go to work, you come back, you're equal, you're roommates, you go on trips and you do crazy things, you drink, you're essentially up until that point, some not, and then the families and that first kind of thing. So you have to, if you're living in an intergenerational family like a joint family, you have to remember that that's their marriage and their views of it, right? Which is very different from your views, right?
Yeah.
Right. But who gets hurt in the process is the person with the womb who's carrying the child mostly, right? So, where it comes to a head, and this is the conflict, right, which you necessarily may not see or be able to escape or draw boundaries from until the point where this idea of having children comes into play. This is where you see the conflict, right? This is where everything changes, right? Because
Yeah.
then, in the second kind of marriage, your children is your choice and your ultimate responsibility, right?
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
in the first kind of marriage, it is the entire family, extended family, society, religion to raise the kid to continue the status quo,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It is not
Yeah.
about the kid or the kid's individuality or who they are innately. Nothing about that. It is about continuance of that species or caste or genes or set of values or religion or whatever else it is, right?
Yeah.
Now this is where it comes to a head, and this is why birth and conception and fertility and postpartum and parenting is so conflicting for so many of us today,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Like Like how you rightly put it across, like they still say, right, whether it's arranged or love, conflicts are bound to happen, but the way we deal with it is not changed. Like even like not like mutual conversations, having healthy conversations, coming to consensus, that happens very rarely. And there is always a myth around, especially in Indian society, that get a child, everything is going to be fine.
Correct.
And
So that's
but
right.
child cannot be a solution for having an emotional intimacy between a couple, right? How can
Correct.
a child suddenly come and create that emotional connect? It's not just, it's not that you're not satisfied with each other because the opposite person is not able to emotionally connect with me. So, how
Correct.
does it, a child's presence or a new life's presence, bring it or
Correct.
seed that for a longer
Correct.
journey, right? Child
Correct.
will come in 18 years, 17 years, and then the child is going to fly away for his or her own life. So, how do you connect that? How do we understand that
Correct.
need
So,
of or seeding it? Yes.
correct. So when you think about that first kind of marriage that I described, remember
Yes.
the whole purpose of a couple coming together is not for their physical pleasure or instant or gratification, sexual gratification. It's nothing like that, right? It's a religious duty to bear offspring for the
Yep.
continuance of the religion, right? It's a religious duty. This is the socio-cultural background of people who belong to that kind of generation and marriages saying you have a child and everything will be okay. Because in that kind of marriage, remember, intimacy of any sort was considered a short term, citrimbum, perimbum,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Citrimbum is body pleasures which lasts for a small time. There is a religious background to this. Perimbum is the ultimate spiritual nirvana, right? Which is
Mm.
supposed to be permanent. And this
Mm.
citrimbum or the body pleasure is supposed to be temporary. Therefore, is not prioritized over this pursuit of and whatever
Mm.
religious thing for the bigger goal. So with this
Mm.
in mind,
Mm.
in that kind of marriage, suffering and sadness, etc., was a given. In எல்லா மேரேஜ்லயும், what do they say? Whatever, வீட்டுக்கு வீட்டு வாசப்படி. They say
Correct.
that every kind of marriage இவ்வளவுதான். This is it. Don't expect, why are you expecting this is some newfangled thing that you're expecting, is what most
Mm.
people would say of that generation, right? Because
Correct.
those were the values of the contract that they entered into, right?
Mm.
Or somebody else. So that is where it's coming from. But that's not okay for somebody who sought this kind of marriage, which is that the construct or the value systems binding this couple is mutual love, respect, trust, dependability, emotional dependability. Okay.
Mm.
So if you ask the people who have that kind of marriage, they would say that no, husband is not my friend. And you know what? Back in the day, the men would be out and there'll be a bunch of women at home, right? So this emotional, whatever need, it was an
Mm.
it was understood that other women would provide that, being listening and heard and
Yep.
all that, right?
Yep.
But now that's not the marriage that I am in, right? I
Yep.
want that and my husband wants that out of me, right?
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
if he's got something at work, he wants to sit with me and talk about how to navigate that, right?
Yep.
And if I
Yeah.
have something in my work, I want to sit with him and talk to each other as equals. This
Yeah.
is baffling for people who did not grow up like that, right?
Yeah.
And I've heard people of that generation say that, oh my God, they both sit together, even if it's like a $50 thing, they both discuss it, they both discuss finances, and it's very baffling for somebody who
Mm.
grew up thinking the man makes the financial decisions, right?
Yep.
And even
Yeah.
if one generation ago the woman was earning, there are families where the decisions are ultimately done by or controlled by the man. There are also women who do that, right? Like, so my point is the equality of thought and looking at each other as equals is a massive shift, remember? Because
Yeah.
that kind of marriage goes by male superiority, firstborn superiority, caste superiority. Because remember, it is not about the individual at all. It is only
Yeah.
about that male
Yeah.
propagating his caste and bloodline. That's all. So he is a figure, like a president.
Yeah.
It is not
Yeah.
about him, remember? So this is what
Mm.
patriarchy is. Okay, so in that traditional family setup, okay, say you
Mm.
had two sons. Okay, the elder son gets the primacy, right? Because he's the elder son, and that is religion dictated. Okay, that space. He did not earn it, right? It
Okay.
is not about him as a person at all. There is no democracy there, right? So even if the firstborn is a, you know, what we call tarudalar, whatever, right? You know, alcoholic, da
Mm.
da da. He is the figurehead of the family after
Yeah.
the male dies, the father dies,
Mm.
right? So
Yeah.
this is why the mother will be playing games and because it's about saving her space in that construct, right?
Yeah.
Right, hoping
Yeah.
that this person will take on that mantle.
Fine. Yeah.
And now this person thinks it's about him. He takes on that mantle because his ego is satiated and he propagates that, right? Now, if he chooses not to do that, right, if he marries somebody outside of caste, whatever, he will be guilted saying, you can't light my funeral fire, all that stuff, right? So, he has always been put at odds with love for this woman versus
Mm.
his duty, right? And say he chooses the woman, he'll be thrown out and the next son will be put into that place of position, because it's all about by the women themselves, you know, the mother-in-law and whoever else, because it's safety, it's about the propagation of the status quo, right?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
this is the construct in which this operates, right? So what I'm saying
Mm.
is, as much as you got to wonder about emotional intimacy, right? And what we saw being modeled for us.
Yeah.
Some of us did to certain degrees, many of us did not. You know, many of us grew up in families where we've never seen our parents touch before
Yep.
us,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Like the only time in, I mean, I lived at home until I was in my 12th standard, right? So what, 18 years? The only time I have seen my dad, you know, touch my mom is, you know, when one of my cousins died. He was the same age as me, and we got the telegram, and my mom was crying, and you know, maybe he was patting her hand or something like that. In 18 years, I have never seen them touch,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Because that is the thing of there is a lot of shame around sex, sexuality, sensory pursuits,
Yeah.
and that is also in a big way moderated by religion, right? That
Yeah.
religious taboo about the uterus, the menstruation, and you know, maikidwa, you know, sex being used as power to
Yeah.
control the man, as if the man has no brain of his own, right? This is where all of this comes from,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
you're talking about women, or you know, situations where the woman could not sit next in the sofa next to the father-in-law,
Mm.
for example,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
The taboo and shame, and women being lower to men, women eating after men, because it's that hierarchy, right, where
Yes.
everyone takes their assigned place to promote the religion, the
The
caste,
village.
the
Yeah.
primacy, right? The Anna, then the Tambi, right? So the
Yeah.
man, the eldest son takes the lead, and the man is at a higher hierarchy than the woman. The woman who gives birth to a son is of a higher hierarchy than the woman who gives birth to daughters. These
Yes.
are all the set of norms, and you get married for that. You get
Yes.
married to do your duty to God, right?
Mm.
So the
Yeah.
whole family is oriented not towards the individual's pleasure, but to the service of what they think is a higher purpose, right?
Yeah. 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 Very nicely put across. We as a generation at the present times are a little confused and we don't know whether we are there or here, and we also don't know. I sometimes feel that when clients come to me and say that my husband doesn't do that or my wife doesn't do it, so we don't know why we are getting married. The whole essence of why are you, what is the need of getting married right now with this person, or just because everybody is telling, just because the age is here, or just because it'll be over age if you later get married, or you won't be able to give birth, or whatever. But beyond that, we're not even able to think beyond that. Why am I actually need to be naked in front of this guy? Simple as that.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah.
And
So
how do you
that's
think that this why can be answered at a phase before even somebody is coming and telling உனக்கு வயசாயிடுச்சு நீ கல்யாணம் பண்ணிக்கோ, அதுக்கு முன்னாடி I should be knowing or feeling confident about why will I get married in the future, right?
correct. But you know what?
Hmm.
I think, and this goes back to this idea of individuation and both men and women growing into adulthood emotionally and separating from the family of origin and having their own ideas or thoughts or living alone for a period of time so they can figure out who they are, is heavily shamed and looked down upon and prohibited at all costs because of this, right? Then you won't promote the status quo, right? You won't be this obedient, girl that, the future daughter-in-law. So they don't think that they're raising you as you're my daughter and somebody that I love. And, they said, beti paraya dhan, right? Like, வேற யார் வீட்டு சொத்தையோ நான் இங்க raise பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கேன். So it's like your borrowed goods, and then I need to send you off to your final, like, real, place, right? Like and that's so ingrained, right? Like I get so irritated when my mom says ungathukku, meaning not the house I live here, my in-laws house. I'm like, I've not lived there for a single day in my life, right? In the sense that I go visit and that's that, right? That's not my house. Okay, this is my house. My husband and I live here together. So can you please stop saying that? It's annoying,
I
it's
have to
irritating,
tell this. Even
right?
today,
And
I
my
feel.
home is where my parents live, right? That's why would it be anything else?
No, actually, I have to tell this. Like me being the youngest of my, I have an elder sister. So that house is Meeta ka ghar, and this house is my husband Karthik's house. So where am I? There is no house for me. And it is in-laws' house, or it is Karthik's house, or it is my mom's house or my sister's house. So the whole thing that this is my house. This is not even my house now. This is my husband's house. That's how we label it. Very rarely we get to see where women are saying that, okay, it is Sangeeta's house or it is Ila's house. That very rarely happens, as you said.
Yeah, it's
And
about taking space, right? Women, you're not supposed to take up space. You're supposed to be invisible and in the background. This is my space. Again, when I do somatic work, one of the main things as a team that we explore is this idea of taking up space. And that is very, it's a simple thing, but it has so many layers to it, right?
yeah. Yeah.
This idea that you are worthy of taking up space in this universe, right?
Yes.
We really don't comprehend that because of so many other things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Very nicely put that. It's all about space, right? Yeah. It's all about space that, and that's, if you take that space, then you give that credit. If you don't take that space, then you don't give that credit. Like most of the time, I've always seen that. I've always felt it like you do so much for the family and you do for the extended family and everybody. Then it's always credited that Karthik வீட்ல இருந்து நல்லா வந்தது, or அவங்க, so where actually then I feel that I'm the one who's juggling beyond everything and ensuring the logistics is happening in place and everything goes smooth, but then the credit goes to the male part, and the male part just comes, stands on that day and does his duty. That's it. So there is, as
அதுதான்
you said,
it's
there is
like
no space.
president versus prime minister ல அந்த figure head மாதிரி தான் the monarch versus the
Yeah,
prime minister அவங்க
yeah,
வந்து their representations, they're not real people, right? Because you're the
yeah,
ones that are supporting that, and it's okay if nobody acknowledges that, but emotional intimacy is expecting your partner to observe and acknowledge and mirror that, and when you don't get that, that's a problem, right?
yeah. So, yeah, so I've had women coming and talking to me, and unfortunately, I had also a man coming and counseling for a session, and he said that I'm very happy in my marriage, as in all my sexual needs and giving birth to baby, and all those things are happening, but I'm not emotionally able to connect with my wife, nor I see that taking that effort from her end. So that emotional intimacy is not just generally when we say that women is very nurturing, she is very emotional, and it's not just the female, it's the male part also who need that emotional connect. So what
Absolutely.
happens if a life is or if a marriage is without emotional intimacy, or they don't have that emotional connect, but every other thing is satisfied, luxury, sexual needs, everything is there, but emotional connect is not there, and they look for some third person outside for that connect.
Yeah, I think emotional intimacy is a prerequisite for both man and woman, right? So, this idea and emotional intimacy is the ability to feel safe enough to be vulnerable,
Hmm.
so that our partners can see every bit of us, the
Yeah.
dark sides, the shadow sides, things that we're not proud of, things that we're proud of, this accurate mirroring, and validation. We all seek that in our attachment, right?
Yeah.
Especially, with our partner. So I think the needs are the same, right? To be seen, to be heard, to be accurately reflected back, to be cherished, to be,
Yeah.
uh, and I think, the ability to be vulnerable and show up
Yeah.
with all of ourselves, knowing that, this person is here for us, okay, and
Hmm.
nothing's going to scare them away. That's scary. That is absolutely scary, right? When you are showing up as the most vulnerable part of yourself, and that is where a lot of our early attachment wounds come in, and whether we have been, what the quality of our early attachment figures and our reciprocal relationship with them, was their attunement, was their accurate mirroring back of self,
Yeah.
or all of that, right, plays a huge role in how we show up in our relationships, and that's scary, right? It's the most intimate, vulnerable parts of ourselves, right? And
Yeah.
a big, our early attachment types, we do mirror that in our marriages, and we do seek out people that, sort of unconsciously mirror what we didn't have or have, in an effort to, change it. So there's so many unconscious dynamics about how we come together
Hmm.
as a couple, right? So I'm not saying
Hmm.
that when we choose, that's necessarily better than, somebody else choosing it for them. Maybe not, we don't know. The idea that you're an adult is that you have some awareness of this and some experience of this, okay?
Hmm.
Otherwise, and to be honest, I don't know, I see some of these so-called, love or whatever relationships, and again I see that in college or whatever, the confusion mirrored there, right? Lots of, uh, you see people saying, my boyfriend is so modern, yeah, he let me wear sleeveless. What, so you are in an arranged, this is much worse than an arranged marriage, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where somebody lets you, so it's the same patriarchy at work there, it's the
Yeah.
same choices. And if a woman is in an interreligious or intercaste relationship, even before the man asks her to convert, she's already given up meat for him. She's already started praying to
Yeah.
his God to be accepted by his mother and father, right?
Yeah.
That's arranged marriage. What are you talking about? There's no difference, because
Yeah.
you are still internalizing the patriarchal rules in which you want to inhabit, right? Where is the
Yeah.
respect there? Where is the, so that's no better.
Uh,
Actually, it's in a lot of cases even worse, because you have no idea of who you are, and you're still submitting, and surrendering, which means that you want to be in that first kind of marriage that I described, right?
yes.
Not the
Yes.
second kind of marriage, right?
Yeah.
So we think
Yeah.
love marriage is the second kind of marriage. No,
No.
it's not, right? Because if both partners have deeply internalized the patriarchal norms and the religious expectations out of this marriage, it is still the first kind of marriage, right? So what are you talking about? You go into it accepting those rules, right? And then
Hmm.
you expect this to happen. No,
Yeah.
it won't. When has it ever happened before? Like, this conversation should have happened, on the first date or the
First
second
thing.
date, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not after
Uh,
having two kids, right?
sadly, yeah. So how do you know, like, especially in an arranged marriage, where as in, still it's there in India, and families come together and say these two are need to get married and everything. How do you know, or how do you seek an emotional connect there? How do you know that person will actually get connected with me, and like, I don't know, that's always a question in the people who get into arranged marriage. And I've had a lot of people later feeling, oh my god, this person doesn't even know how to express, and I needed expression.
Yeah, I don't know if it's related to just arranged marriage, to be honest, right? Even when you're that question or that conundrum can also happen when you're dating, right? It's all hunky dory, and then oops, yeah, that can also. It's not like, yeah. I mean, that can also happen when you had complete choice and autonomy over your decisions, because um, what to actually. So again, I keep going back to this, right? It is about who shows up in the room and what needs to be
Hmm.
healed or solved.
Hmm.
That's the fundamental thing, okay? And some of us go into
Hmm.
relationships thinking that the partner is the panacea, like he's the cure all for all my childhood hurts and what my care providers didn't give me, and that and this. That's an unfair expectation, right? That's
Yep.
your baggage, not his, right?
Yep.
So same thing with the other partner, right? Or previous failed relationships and what you did not get there, and expecting this person to somehow heal and cure and provide that, right? To a certain extent, there's give and take. I mean, there is a window where we do, uh, you know, um, kind of bring complementary skills that the other person doesn't have. That's the
Hmm.
fundamentals, right? But beyond
Yeah.
that, expecting the spouse to be a therapy or healing, um,
More.
may not actually be, that's not fair on the other one, right? They did not sign up to be your therapist. So,
Correct.
I think it's important, but to get to that point, there needs to be a real inner awareness and exploration of who you are,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And generally, people that have gone, I mean, people that have gone through certain hardships in life may have that very early, deep inner awareness,
Hmm.
or may have dated multiple partners, so they then you the mirror is held up, right? You go through that breakup, there is no running away from. It's a deep, oh, this is me, right?
Yeah.
And these are the things, right? So
Yeah.
unless you've done that, you don't come into anything, whether it's love or arranged marriages, with
Yeah.
any deep understanding of who you are, right? So then it's like two children wanting to stay together, right? That's, you look at college relationships, you know
Hmm.
I don't know if it's the same now, but to go by movies, right? The guy is standing, he looks at the girl for a couple of times, they meet in the canteen, second time they're talking about marriage, right? So it's not about dating for dating's sake and being okay with
Hmm.
relationships breaking up, at that age, and expecting it
Yeah.
to be forever. Because again, that is internalized religious guilt, thinking
Yes.
that love should only happen once, and if I kiss somebody or if I have sex with somebody, then I have to be with them for the rest of their lives. If not, God is going to punish me and take my eyes out, and I'm a wanton woman, I'm a whore if I've had sex with multiple partners, right? And so,
Mm.
you go into it with your eyes open. Same thing for the man, right? How I touched
Mm.
her, how can I touch anybody else, right? So
Mm.
again, that is you internalizing all of those things, right?
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
Internalizing patriarchy, internalizing religious guilt, and still calling it dating. It's not, right? It is
Yeah.
arranged marriage, right?
Yeah.
You think there is an illusion of choice there,
Mm.
but it's not a real choice for you, because real choice means you can walk away.
Yep.
But if you have self made boundaries that if I touch somebody, I cannot walk away from them, if not, God will kill me,
Mm.
what's the difference, right? You might as well just go to your mom and say, find me a girl, right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah, the inner work is so much needed because two different personalities come together when it's a marriage, and two different upbringings, the two different environments that they are brought up in, and that all impacts the married life.
Can you give me 1 second? I'm sorry, there's continuous knocking. I just want to deal with this. 1 second. I'll just
Yeah.
be right back.
Yeah.
1 second.
So yes, we all need to do that inner work constantly and realize that that inner work is what is going to help us to have a healthy marriage. And I also believe that we all need to understand and empathize with our partner's way of looking at marriage and way of looking at life. So, while we speak about inner work and all those things, the realities are there is not much time given. Like, okay, when you say yes, and then uh, immediately, maybe 3 months or 4 months, not beyond that, the couples are forced to marriage, and then after the marriage is all the shock, and just because now that we have tied the knot we can't get out of it, so there is so much of suffocation because this emotional intimacy is not there.
Yes.
And this, it is very time bound. The marriage has become very time bound, that today you at this age you say yes, and within 3 months you need 3 or 4 months because the பையன் வீட்டுக்காரங்க விட்டு போயிடுவாங்க or the பொண்ணு விட்டு போயிடும். So there is so much of rush to it. And rush to what? Rush to such a huge decision of life that is going to impact the rest 70, 80 years.
Yes. Yes. So, but the time you have to understand, right? The timeline that that generation is working towards is again optimized for offsprings and the grandparents' strength to raise them, because you don't, right? So this is the first kind of marriage you're talking about. The first, it is not about you, it is not about him, it's not about whether you're sexually compatible, it's not about if you're whether you're sexually satisfied, because they think that this container will work itself out over a period of time. Maybe it does, maybe but that container itself has a lot of holes in it, and it didn't 2 or 3 generations ago, right? Like, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. There, this idea that you have your whole life to figure things out comes from that belief. You have to understand, this is why there is a lot of pressure, right?
Hmm.
Because of this primacy, religious need to, have children and settle down, so that you can, the family is settled, right? And that religious role, the man can then assume his full religious role in the hierarchy. That
Hmm.
is what all of this is about, right? and
Yep.
and only if you're married you can light the fire, for example, right? So if the dad is getting older, they have to get you married, because what if I die and then you can't, so it is not about you and him and your, it's not your day at all, right? It is, look at
Hmm.
our marriage rituals, right? It is everything but the couple, right? It is
Yeah.
about everybody getting together, the families proving, hey, look, I kept the girl a virgin, I got her married to the same caste and I did my role and
Yeah.
whatever else, right? So that is where the pressure is coming from, and that is where the time pressure is coming from,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's a market, stale goods don't get sold in the market, right? It's only the yes, but is there agency and autonomy and choice to say I won't put myself in that market and put all this on and wax pan katrika, hoping to be picked by the most whatever suitor,
Yeah.
right? That's what the marriage market is, right?
Yeah.
It is katrika vyabaram at the end of the day, right? Ponnu gunda irkala, you know uh, it's a bunch of